She brushed past me, just barely, and whispered, "You're stiffer than the chair." I froze, her scent, her warmth, the way her fingers lingered on mine. It was like electricity in the air. I shouldn't be noticing, shouldn't be feeling this, but I couldn't look away. And in that quiet room, everything changed, just with a touch. I hadn't meant to notice her at first. The way she moved through the room, graceful, almost untouchable, made it impossible not to. She leaned slightly to reach for a book on the top shelf, and I caught the subtle tilt of her neck, the soft line of her jaw catching the light. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself she was just a woman passing by. Then she brushed past me, just a fraction of an inch, the edge of her sleeve grazing my forearm. It sent a shiver up my spine, not from cold but from the awareness of her nearness. I shifted in the chair, trying to seem casual, but she leaned closer anyway, her scent, warm, faintly floral, undeniably hers, slipping into the air around me. "You're stiffer than the chair," she whispered, her voice low, teasing, but with a softness I couldn't ignore. Her words weren't sharp. They lingered, floating between us like smoke. My throat tightened, and I found myself staring, not at her lips, but at her eyes, liquid and confident, yet strangely hesitant. I wanted to respond, to say something clever, anything, but my voice caught somewhere behind my ribs. She noticed, I think. How could she not? And the corners of her mouth tilted into a faint, knowing smile. Her hand, brushing against mine again, accidentally, lingered just long enough to make me question if it really was accidental. Around us, the room seemed to hold its breath. The ticking clock sounded louder. A faint draft from the open window made the papers on the desk tremble. I was aware of every inch of her presence, every subtle sway of her posture, the quiet rhythm of her breathing. And then, an unexpected sound from the hallway, the scrape of a door hinge. She froze, and so did I. Her gaze shot toward it, sharp, alert, but her hand didn't leave mine entirely. A quiet tension crackled between us, fragile, potent, and unbearably real. I swallowed, my heart hammering, and realized nothing in my life had ever prepared me for a moment this small, this charged, this impossible. I kept my eyes on the notebook in front of me, but I wasn't really reading. She was there, leaning against the counter, the afternoon light spilling over her hair, catching strands of gold I hadn't noticed before. Every small movement she made seemed deliberate, yet fragile, like she was testing the air between us. I remembered the last time I'd felt this. Exposed. I hadn't. Not like this. Not with someone who made me forget myself with a glance, a smile, the brush of her hand against mine when passing by. It wasn't just desire. It was curiosity, awe, the kind of pull I'd only read about. Her laugh echoed softly, almost conspiratorial, and I wanted to lean in closer, but something held me back. She was older, wiser, and that made everything feel both dangerous and thrilling. Social expectations, whispered warnings, my own hesitation. They all clanged like bells in my mind. "You always look so serious," she murmured, stepping closer than necessary. My shoulder brushed hers, and I felt her breath graze my ear. A shiver ran down my spine I couldn't control. I tried to retreat, to focus on my pen, on anything but her gaze held mine. And then, as if noticing my struggle, she allowed herself a soft smile, warm, gentle, teasing, and lingered just long enough for the tension to settle between us, taut and impossible to ignore. For a moment, we simply existed in that fragile bubble. Two people, worlds apart in experience, yet caught in a quiet gravity neither could explain. I was leaning over the table, pretending to examine the sketches, but my eyes kept drifting to her. She was close, closer than I expected, her arm brushing mine as she reached for a pencil. The electricity between us was subtle, but it burned hotter than anything I'd felt before. "You're staring again," she said softly, not accusing, just observing. Her words were a trap. I couldn't look away, couldn't lie. I tried to glance down at my sketch, my fingers trembling slightly. She smirked, leaning just a fraction closer. Our breaths mingled for a heartbeat, and I realized how unbearably close we were. I wanted to lean in to close the tiny gap between us, but the thought of someone walking in, seeing, judging, froze me. A sudden knock on the door made us jump apart, a sharp reminder of the world outside our bubble. My pulse thundered in my ears. She bit her lip, glancing at the door, then back at me, her eyes dark with a mixture of mischief and frustration. We returned to our positions, but the air had changed. Every small gesture, her hand resting briefly on mine while passing a page, the way she tilted her head to watch me sketch, felt magnified. I caught her glance lingering on my lips, and I swore I felt her pulse brush against mine in the quiet between heartbeats. The knock had passed, but we were closer than ever, tethered by unspoken attraction and the thrilling risk of being caught. Neither of us spoke, yet everything set itself in the lingering warmth of a hand, a shared breath, a glance that lasted just a second too long. The room felt smaller, the sunlight dimming as clouds rolled outside. I was conscious of every movement she made, the subtle sway of her hips, the soft brush of her sleeve against my arm. I could smell the faint warmth of her perfume mixed with the nervous energy that seemed to hang between us. "You've been avoiding my question," she said, her voice low, deliberate, close enough that I could feel the tremor of it against my own chest. She leaned forward slightly, and my eyes caught the curve of her collarbone, the way her hair fell over her shoulder like silk. I wasn't avoiding," I murmured, my voice sounding too loud in the sudden quiet. My fingers fidgeted with the edge of the notebook. She noticed. Of course, she noticed. She always noticed. Her hand moved, just a fraction, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. It should have been nothing, but my chest tightened, and I realized I was holding my breath. She leaned closer, the heat of her body brushing mine, our proximity shrinking the space between words, between intention, between restraint and surrender. For a moment, time stalled. I imagined letting it happen, closing the distance, but the sound of a distant car horn snapped me back. She paused, her eyes flicking toward the window, then back to mine. She didn't move away, not completely. The electricity remained, crackling, unspoken, dangerously potent. Her lips parted slightly, a question, a dare, a confession all at once. And then, I thought I'd finally caught my breath, thought the tension between us had settled into something manageable. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, a fleeting shadow crossing her face, and I saw it. A message preview that made her hand tremble just slightly. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed my curiosity. She hesitated, sliding the phone into her pocket without answering. The brief exposure, the glimpse of vulnerability, it made my chest ache in ways I didn't expect. She stepped closer, uncomfortably close, and brushed against me as she reached for a sketch pad. The contact lingered longer than necessary, almost as if she hadn't realized, or perhaps hadn't cared, how it felt. My fingers itched to close the gap, to anchor her, but I stopped myself. She was fragile in that moment, both physically and emotionally, and I didn't want to frighten her away. Then, in a quiet voice almost meant only for me, she said, "I shouldn't be letting this happen." Her eyes held mine, heavy with something unspoken. Fear? Longing? Regret? It was impossible to tell, but my heart knew. I wanted to protest, to say she was already letting it happen, that she didn't need permission, but I swallowed the words. Instead, I let the tension speak. Her shoulder brushed mine again, a fleeting reassurance, a tether neither of us fully acknowledged. We stood there, closer than ever yet still separated by unspoken truths. The risk had doubled, the pull intensified, and the world outside no longer seemed capable of containing us. The room felt impossibly small, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, pressing us closer together. I could feel the warmth of her body, the subtle rise and fall of her breath brushing against mine. Every nerve in me was taut, alive, waiting for a decision neither of us had dared to voice. Her fingers brushed mine again, this time deliberately, tracing a line up my hand, and I realized I couldn't pull away without breaking something fragile between us. "Do you want this?" I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. Her eyes, dark and glimmering with unsaid emotions, met mine. She tilted her head, lips parted slightly, and for a heartbeat, it seemed like everything might fall into place. My heart hammered. I felt the ache of desire and the fear of consequences collide in the same instant. She leaned closer, and I caught the faint scent of her perfume, warm and intoxicating. My hands hovered near her waist, trembling, unsure if I should commit or retreat. The world outside, the noise, the expectations, the age gap, faded to nothing. Then, almost instinctively, our bodies moved toward each other, closing the remaining inches. Her lips brushed mine, a whisper of contact that sent electricity shooting through me. Not a kiss yet, not fully, but a promise, a confirmation of everything simmering between us. We pulled back slightly, breaths mingling, eyes locked. The tension remained, raw and alive, but clarity had come. We understood each other completely, and the choice had been made. The afternoon light softened, spilling golden warmth across the room. We sat side by side on the couch, fingers intertwined, the silence between us no longer charged with hesitation, but with something steady, intimate. Her head leaned lightly against my shoulder, and I felt the slow, calming rhythm of her breath against mine. "I never thought," she murmured, voice low, almost a whisper, "that this could feel right." I tightened my hand around hers, brushing my thumb over her knuckles. "Neither did I admitted, letting the honesty linger between us. There were no perfect words, no grand declarations, just the simple weight of presence, the shared warmth, the quiet acknowledgement of what we had discovered together. Her fingers twined through mine, pressing softly. Our knees brushed, our shoulders touched, and it all felt natural, human, unforced. The world outside, the judgments, the doubts, the age gap, melted away. It was just us. I tilted my head, and she met me halfway, resting her forehead against mine. A soft laugh escaped her lips, and I mirrored it, feeling the tension of weeks dissolve into quiet bliss. We didn't need to speak. Everything was said in the touch, the glance, the lingering closeness. And for the first time, I realized that being this close, this honest, didn't need explanation. It just was. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?